Hello and welcome to another Arthritis Wellness Conversation. My name is Sandra Sova, and as always, I'm joined by a research scientist from Arthritis Research Canada and members of the Arthritis Patient Advisory Board. Our topic today is healthy weight and better outcomes for arthritis. On the panel today is research scientist Dr. Susan Bartlett. And from the Arthritis Patient Advisory Board, we are joined by Christine, Natasha, Trish, Shannon, and Eileen. So maintaining a healthy body weight is something that benefits all individuals. However, there are some specific reasons why those of us living with a diagnosis of arthritis may want to pursue this even more. Let's basically start in with you, Dr. Bartlett, and ask, is there some specific reasons why those with arthritis conditions may want to pay extra attention in this area?
Well, I think there are many compelling reasons why people with arthritis want to pay attention to their weight and to do what they can to maintain as healthy a weight as possible. We know that 1 in 4 Canadians are obese, and 2/3 of Canadians are either overweight or obese. So that's a lot of Canadians walking around with extra weight. The difficulty is that every 10 pounds that you carry, every additional 10 pounds, translates into a force of about 30 to 40 pounds through the knees. So it makes the knees and the feet and the ankles in particular especially vulnerable. When you're overweight, it makes it harder to move. It makes it more likely that you're going to be sedentary overall. And of course, we know that being sedentary is one of the worst things that you can be when you have arthritis, because movement keeps the fluids moving, keeps the joints more limber, and keeps everything working a lot better.
Absolutely. I know we've talked about that on these conversations before about how there seems to be a little bit of a myth that perhaps that physical activity and living with a chronic condition like arthritis don't go together. And I'm going to raise my hand. I had that limiting belief for many, many years.
I think for me, as I was an athlete, I was a downhill skier and professional, like a badminton player, high-end badminton player. So being diagnosed in my 30s with arthritis, which I thought was an old person's disease, I never thought about weight gain. I never thought about being obese. I never correlated it to my life and my disease because I was very active. But gradually over the years, I found it was getting harder and harder to stay active. I had to modify how I did things. I had to actually give up skiing. I had to give up badminton. And I found that was huge. But, you know, the more I sat back and realized that I'm in pain, but I got to keep moving because if I don't, it's going to get worse. And I didn't want to have those stiff joints that I was getting. My walking was getting more difficult. And it was funny because, you know, 5 pounds here and then another 5 pounds here. And next thing you know is it's 20 pounds. And all of a sudden you're like, now what do I do? And I found sometimes there's a myth about physical activity. People think that it actually makes it worse. But actually, as Dr. Bartlett said, is every time we move our joints, we're actually feeding our joints. We're giving them nutrients and keeping them, you know, healthy.
I actually did not start exercising until after my rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis when I was about 29. Wasn't diagnosed for a number of years, so every time I did try to exercise, it was difficult and painful because I didn't understand that I was also exercising with undiagnosed RA. So at first I thought I can't exercise, but then when I finally did learn how to exercise, thanks to a great physiotherapist in the Mary Pack Arthritis program, learning how to exercise with arthritis, that I realized it was actually really beneficial to me instead. So it was just kind of that actual learning how to exercise with arthritis that helped me.
Such a good point, Eileen. And Christine, I'm going to call on you because I noticed in your information, you use the term making modifications. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, with my arthritis, my wrist fused very, very quickly. So within a very short period of time, I believe it was within 3 months, my wrist totally fused on its own. So I could not bend it. So doing a lot of sports or doing a lot of activities, I've got restrictions because I can't bend my wrist. So therefore I don't want to fall. So that put a damper on the downhill skiing unless I was totally splinted up with wrists and my thumb joints. So I gave that up. I did do a lot of aquafit, and then I started back with Pilates. And I find that that is really, really good. However, I've had to take it under my own steam and figure out what works for me, because when you go to a lot of the Pilates classes, they know how to modify, but they really don't know how to modify for people with rheumatoid arthritis, because symptoms change all the time. You have to watch how many repetitions and the amount of weight. So even though they say, well, at your level, or if you're at an intermediate level or a beginner level, you should be pushing this type of weight. And I have to be very specific and say, no, that's too much for me. So Pilates I found is really, really good because it strengthens the core muscles. And so I'm strengthening the muscles around my joints, especially around the ankles. My ankles are a lot stronger now. I don't roll over on them as much.
That sounds like you've got a lot of real self-awareness of what you need to do to protect. I liked how you mentioned how people are not always having that awareness, that modification is maybe for some other mobility or injury, but people don't necessarily have the understanding of arthritis in the joint. Dr. Bartlett, are there some cautions that we need to be mindful of in order to not damage, in order to protect our joints when we are doing weight-bearing exercises?
Well, I love hearing all of the conversation I've heard so far, so I'm going to pick up on a few things. I always like to say that exercise is important for everybody, but if you have arthritis, it is especially important. In fact, it's one of the most important things you can do. My husband and I will disagree about why exercise is important. He's an exercise physiologist, so he really focuses on the physiological benefits and how it strengthens the heart and it improves glucose control in the body. It helps prevent stroke, heart attacks, all kinds of negative things that tend to happen to us when we're more at risk as we age and when we have arthritis. As a psychologist, I like to focus on the psychological benefits because exercise is one of the most important things we can do for stress management, to improve our mood. In fact, the effects of exercise on mood are so powerful and so well understood now that in Canada, we recommend exercise as the first line treatment for mild to moderate depression. So when patients come in, the first thing that we're going to ask them to do is to become more physically active. Now, the best exercise to do, well, the best exercise is the exercise that you enjoy or the activity that you enjoy. A lot of work and effort has gone into, should it be aerobics? Should it be strength training? How much? How often? But the truth is, for most people, just to remain active is a challenge. And so find what you like and something that you can do and that fits into your lifestyle. Walking has really impressive benefits. We like to recommend that people aim for about 30 minutes a day, but it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be 3 10-minute blocks. What kind of exercise do you want to look out for? Well, there are some exercises that are more problematic. I've done a lot of work with yoga and looking at the benefits of yoga. So Christine, what you're saying about Pilates really resonates. We would hear many of the participants in our studies talk about the same kinds of reactions they would have with yoga. With yoga, for instance, you don't want to be doing things like hot yoga or aggressive yoga or yoga that has a lot of explosive movements, because that can make the joints more vulnerable. Anything that's percussive in general, we worry about over time. So you have to think about some of the aspects of the exercise you enjoy, and then, think about your age, think about what joints are affected by arthritis, and make some reasonable decisions around that. And often working with a kinesiologist or an exercise trainer or a physical therapist is a great way to just get feedback about what might work best for you.
I really liked how we're touching on the emotional, psychological benefit of exercise. It is something that I could go on and on about how I personally feel about it. I'd like to hear from the panel. I know that Eileen, I see a little bit of nodding there. I know you've experienced some of that. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I also want to say the kinesiologists are great. My boyfriend is one, so it's been amazing having him kind of follow me behind me, telling me like, your posture's off, try this instead. And it's been very, very helpful. So yeah, those are definitely great people to help with. But I found particularly, because I was diagnosed first with depression at 17. And back then, early 2000s, they didn't tell you exercise. Instead, I was told lose 10 pounds and you'll feel better. Had I been given, like some pamphlets on how to exercise, your coping strategies and things like that they do give now, I think I would have probably had better outcomes. But when I started exercising, that's when really my mental health improved. And there's times where I don't need to be on SSRIs. I can actually use exercise to keep my sleep good, to keep my mood good, to keep my anxiety down, or even just take out frustrations or to motivate myself as well. And it's helped in with my hormones too. I don't find myself needing to binge eat as much if I'm staying active and I'm going through a depressive state. That's where I end up binge eating or just going for the bad foods because I had the cravings. When I exercise, those cravings tend to go down. Exercise is, I always say, it's my favorite medicine.
And Eileen, I know that I had noted that after you received your diagnosis, you did, I had asked, did anyone do any significant weight gain or weight loss in conjunction with your arthritis? And after your diagnosis, you lost 60 pounds. So well done.
Thank you. A lot of it was, of course, I had a child and then I had undiagnosed RA and raging depression. So, that caused a lot of bad habits with my eating and then just not also loving myself enough to want to put the effort into exercise and eating healthy. And then, going on the internet, it's so hard to find advice. Well, it's easier now because proper advice going on, but back then, the 6 years ago when I did lose that weight or needed to, there wasn't as much information. There was all these fad diets, try this, try that, instead of learn to eat healthy throughout your life, not just diet.
I would definitely say that I'm a culprit of not exercising, and it's really bad. But as a teenager, I feel like we're always just on our computers and phones and in our beds and not exercising. So definitely having, I have juvenile idiopathic arthritis, so having arthritis and then always being stuck to your laptop and computer is so not motivating to actually step outside and go on a walk. But I found that going on walks with my mom or exercising with other people in a group setting has really helped me. I do dance classes once a week, probably not enough. Like Dr. Bartlett said, I need to be walking at least 30 minutes a day. But I do a group lesson on Sundays, and I feel like when I have other people, and although it's not everyone there has arthritis, having people to exercise with has really helped me and motivated me. I've had a lot of challenges though, because I'm just very lazy in general to get to that part. So just having people motivate me has been really helpful in terms of trying to exercise, but I know that I can probably improve and do more. But I think one step at a time is better than not doing anything.
Someone said to me a number of years ago, they often didn't look forward to exercising, and it was a real challenge to motivate themselves. But one day they realized they never regretted it. And so they made a deal with themselves. I will do at least 5 minutes, and then if I don't feel like doing any more, I'll stop. And the truth was, they realized once they started, they just kept going. And so that might be something to just kind of tuck in the back of your mind, Natasha. If you wait around to the time when you feel like you want to exercise, it might be a little bit like waiting around till you feel like going to the dentist. Not likely to happen. On the other hand, if you can build it in, and even just a little bit, it can make a difference in just keeping you active.
During COVID, I picked up some walking poles on Facebook Marketplace, and because my neighbor has some, and she lives alone. So during COVID, it was a bit of a struggle there, but we have sort of implemented a buddy system, which has helped both of us actually. We take each other for a walk, but the poles, because of my balance issues, have really gave me some extra, that little bit of extra confidence just to have that balance and not worry about tripping or rolling my ankle, or just sometimes I just tip over. Right?
I think for myself, when I was on the cusp of having to give up some of my competitive sports and figure out what my new identity and who I was, and I had to grieve who I was, because I thought I was that athlete. And now to figure out who I am with arthritis was difficult. But I remember going to the Mary Pack Arthritis Center, and the OT talked about the 3 Ps, so prioritizing, planning, and pacing. And I found out that I'm a morning person, so later in the day, my fatigue and my difficulty with exercising, and I used to bail on myself if I was going to the gym at 7 o'clock at night, whereas if I did it at 7 in the morning, I was more accountable to myself and also more successful. So I found out the timing of my, and I also don't always use the word exercise because some people find that's also kind of limiting or kind of challenging. I call it physical activity. So whether I'm going for a walk or I'm going to the gym or going to do my deep water running, I'm always trying to say movement, physical activity. And I found the prioritizing is, what do I really want to do that day? What do I need to get done? And then I actually in my calendar write down that I'm doing the gym at this time. I'm going for a walk on this day with a friend because I'm also accountable going for walks. So I find that if I put it in my calendar, I'm more successful. I'm also trying to find out basically planning ahead. So if I know on the weekend it's going to be a really busy weekend and I know that it's going to be harder for myself, I have to kind of pace myself or figure out maybe what are my priorities that day and do those activities. So I found those things I got from the OT at Mary Pack were really helpful because I was able to take those tools and move forward with it. Because sometimes when your GP or your orthopedic surgeon say, you know, you gotta lose 10 pounds, and they don't give you the tools. Whereas I found the OTs and the PTs, physical therapists were always being able to give me concrete things that I could put in my toolbox.
I used to be a very competitive, I was a competitive gymnast and badminton player and then into skiing. So I had to grieve as well because I had to give up a lot of that. And if I did do it like the skiing, I had to make major modifications.
Eileen, did you have a point you wanted to add?
Yes, I just wanted to highlight something about the Nordic walking poles that Shannon mentioned, because they are a great tool for anyone living with arthritis and for weight loss, because apparently what I was taught, the creator of them, who is an occupational therapist as well, she taught me how to use them, and she says that they actually, they're kind of like using an elliptical outdoors, and they help burn 46% more calories while you use them than regular walking. They not only help with imbalance, but they help keep a load off your hip, knees, and ankles and feet. So if you are overweight and trying to lose weight, they will help a little bit kind of keeping off some of that load until you do lose that weight. And they also get your heart pumping a little bit more than just regular walking. So I definitely recommend them to anyone with arthritis. They're great.
I'm smiling because they've been brought up before, and I was inspired from you guys. I went on my first trail hike with walking poles a couple of weeks ago, and I had a total knee replacement in the middle of March, and having that extra stability and that confidence, and now that I don't have so much pain, being able to move and get that blood pumping and be able to do it safely, it's a freedom, because before you can't really get a good workout in if you're constantly, like I would be, watching my feet and looking at that. So yeah, I'm on the walking pole team with you guys. They're absolutely fantastic.
I found also with the walking poles, with me, I had a sports-related knee injury because of skiing. I had ACL reconstruction, and I tend to favor that side or compensate. So my right hip and my right side's always compensating. So when I walk, I have people on my left side. I tend to lean into them and actually bump into them all the time. But with the poles, I'm more upright, so my posture is better. And then also too is I am actually getting more of a cardio and an upper body, not just lower body. So I'm getting the arms and stuff. But I found it helps my gait. So I have more of a normal heel toe moving forward gait instead of going side to side. So that really helped my biomechanics, and I've gotten less hip pain and less discomfort in my other joints because of the poles.
And they don't look like mobility aids, right? Just like we've brought that up before, walking poles, they're more sort of on that athletic side.
Add something that a lot of us haven't been able to do during COVID, which is the water, Well, I actually did used to be involved in a deep water class, and you would wear the belt and you'd be in the deep section the whole time, and it was about a 45-minute cardio.
Mm-hmm.
But all the load is off your joints.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a lot of, even if you only take a few aquafit classes, I live in a condo where we have an outdoor, but you can transfer those activities. You can learn some exercises on how to do them properly at an aquafit class. Yeah, I think, but we're all missing the water. I think I don't think there's a lack of love for being in a pool
And the sauna.
Yeah, and finding what works and what appeals. Kind of like we're building a recipe here. Exercise is one ingredient, but there are other things as well with regards to the choices that we make. I think it's important to talk about some of those food choices.
I have food allergies, which I've developed. I don't know if it's related to medications or what, but as I've gotten older, I'm allergic to coconut and garlic, and palm oil, which are in almost everything that's processed. So it makes it very difficult when I go out to eat or to buy anything. So my husband, who's now my cook, cooks everything for me from scratch. So we do not buy any salad dressings or any soups or anything. So we are eating healthy, and we are consciously watching the amount of salt that's in food and the amount of processed food. So it's trying to eat naturally and fresh vegetables and fruit.
Natasha, you're nodding, and I know that you make some choices on your foods as well.
Yeah, I can totally relate with that. So my mom doesn't cook in oil at all, like no oil whatsoever. I'm also gluten-free and vegan and sugar-free, so it's very hard being a teen and not going out with your friends and eating everything, because I've really realized over the years that it does have a major effect on my joints. If I do eat something the next day, I just feel like I'm in so much pain and it's just awful. So I really eliminated that in my diet, and say I do one day magically decide to eat something, I kind of know how to reset my body. I have like a cucumber celery juice, which really helps me, or any like smoothies just made out of fruits and vegetables, and that helps me the next day. So I totally relate with Christine and how like healthy eating and clean eating is very important, and how it really affects people's bodies when they do have arthritis, or even in general. I think eating is super important.
Inflammation is a big part of arthritis, and there are ways to eat regardless of what I'm not talking about any diets, but there are foods that are triggers for inflammation.
It's an area that we're learning more and more about. I know for most of my career, many of my physician colleagues would say to patients who asked, should I be eating something different? Should I be doing something different? And they'd say, we don't really have good evidence that what you eat matters. And yet on the same side, we would hear patients say time and time again, for many people, things like eating red meat seem to make their joints feel worse the next day. Certainly more sugar in the diet, alcohol, many of the common things that you would identify could be problematic. But more recent evidence is really showing that what you eat, how you eat, and even the time at which you're eating can make a difference. So I think we're going to see a whole lot more information that comes out around this, and I'm looking forward to it. It makes great sense. I mean, as we begin to understand the microbiome, what we know is that it's profoundly affected by what you eat. Just what you eat today, you can change your microbiome quite a bit. And what seems to be most important is diversity. So eating whole foods that are not processed, getting a good variety of them, and the fermented foods, the stinkier the cheese, in some ways the better it seems to be for your gut, but making sure that you just get a whole range of fruits and vegetables.
Grocery stores are giving us more of the choices of what we want. There are cut up and prepared fresh vegetables ready for you. Instead of having to go for a box of something, the perimeter of the aisles now have things that are more, I think they've been designed out of convenience, but those things that are designed out of convenience can be a real help. They can be energy and time savers. I know, Eileen, you talked about not only modifying your sort of having plans for different workouts on the days depending on how you feel, but also for meal planning. How does that fit into your lifestyle?
Well, there's a number of things that I find I need to do in order to be able to be on top of preparing healthy meals and not just ordering in or eating something very quick and bad for me. Particularly me being also a single mom, I don't like to cook dinner in the evenings. That's usually when my joints are flaring and I'm tired. So I usually cook dinner in the afternoons and heat it up later, or I will batch cook. So I'll cook a whole bunch of something so I have it over for a few days. And I've even tried some of the meal delivery services like HelloFresh, Good Food, all those. And in a flare, those are great. I have to go to the grocery stores. However, I didn't really love the ingredients because they have the white flour, they have other ingredients like that that I typically skip. But in a flare, I think that would be one thing I would definitely reorder. Keeping also some frozen food in the fridge too. So when I batch cook, I always make sure I keep some chili or some meat in the freezer so that, you know, if I can't make it to the store, I have some food.
Well, I've actually, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've started to grow our own vegetables. So I have 3 or 4 different kinds of kale in my garden. I've got arugula, spinach, carrots, beets, you know, rhubarb. I got raspberries and blueberries. So we're going to that. And I also go right now because the markets, we have a lot of farmland around us, and we go and buy fresh right from the farm. Right now strawberries, but then there'll be blueberries coming up. And I actually get more and more of those types of fruits and then freeze them. And then I can make my smoothies. I can throw them into different types of meals and stuff. And my husband's been very good with making different salsas and different tapenades and stuff that are, we're using our fresh our frozen raspberries and stuff, and I know where they're coming from. And I also do, like Eileen does, is I do bulk prep, usually on the weekend. I crank the music, cut up my vegetables, put them into bins. I've also just made all my energy balls for the week. I've got coconut, date, walnut, and walnuts are good for us. And I've also done my rolled oats ones, and then I've also made some pumpkin muffins and loaves. So I do a lot of big batches, and I'm actually now throwing kale and spinach into my spaghetti sauces, into my chili, into my lasagna. So I'm getting more vegetables into a lot of the dishes that we've had from, you know, families passed down. You know, you got a recipe and then we just want to tweak it and add more vegetables and stuff. So I'm finding I'm doing that more and more, and I'm finding just crank the music, start chopping, and it's done.
It's so funny. I know that some of us have been using the Fitbit trackers and tracking our activity. When I'm doing batch cooking, or when I'm doing any of that stuff, I see it's like, oh my goodness, I got to that must have been some good, I've got some good stuff going on. So that can be, it's not exercise, but it's movement. And that is what our bodies need. Well, I think it's been clear just by the conversation that there's lots of things that we as individuals can do to play a role for helping to maintain a healthy weight. I know that I'm really encouraged by the ongoing research that's being done. Some of the research that has come out of Arthritis Research Canada in the area of a healthy body weight and cardiovascular risk is what motivated me 3 years ago to make a lot of lifestyle changes and reduce my weight. I'm sort of the opposite. I was diagnosed very early on at the age of 8 years old and led a sedentary lifestyle up until 4 years ago. Wasn't grieving the loss of activities. I've been celebrating learning how to incorporate activities motivated by the desire to have as healthy of a life as I can.
So I'm still struck by what Eileen said a little bit earlier about losing 60 pounds. It's not many people who actually lose that amount of weight and are able to keep it off. I know that it's easy to believe this happens all of the time if you watch television or you pick up a magazine, but in truth it takes a huge amount of work over a long period of time to lose weight. That said, most Canadians are overweight. I said at the beginning of the hour that 2/3 of Canadians are overweight or obese, and weight really does make a difference. It's a critical ingredient with arthritis. We found in one of our studies that I did about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, losing as little as 5% of your weight, and that could be 10 pounds, can have more of an impact on your pain, your fatigue, your sleep, how you feel overall, your mood, than any medication short of opioids. So if you want to make a difference in how you feel, even a small amount of weight makes a huge difference. You don't have to lose the 60 pounds before you start to feel better. Losing weight is really important as well because, you know, fat is actually a very metabolically active tissue, and it excretes a tremendous amount of hormones and chemicals. And those are pro-inflammatory hormones. And so they make everything much worse. If you have inflammatory arthritis, it increases your systemic inflammation. If you have osteoarthritis, it increases your systemic inflammation to a lesser extent. But we also know that inflammation is implicated in depression as well. So you can see it becomes a real vicious cycle. And at the heart of all of this, I think we come down to a couple of basic messages. Really important to just be active. You don't have to put on spandex. You don't have to do something special. Just get up and move and find ways to keep yourself moving. And then figure out what works for you around eating. Whether it's the batch cooking, whether it's, you know, getting a better sense of how much you need to bring into the house, the things that work well for you, the things that maybe the foods that don't seem to work so well and you need to avoid. Paying attention to these things, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. As you understand your body and you work with your body, you can really wrestle the symptoms of arthritis under control to a great extent, a much greater extent, I think, than much of the medical community had previously appreciated.
Thank you for everyone for taking part in today's discussion. Very, very important topic, maintaining a healthy weight. And I think we can be so encouraged by some of the things that we've heard. And I hope that this has been both inspirational and educational. And I hope that you will tune in again and join us for another Arthritis Wellness Conversation.